She thought her father abandoned her. For 15 years, not a word until the day she knocked over his old Bible and a folded map slid out. It wasn't just a map. It was scorched at the edges, marked with dates, and a single blood-red X over a place she swore didn't exist. That night, someone broke into her apartment, not to steal, but to tear apart every book she owned. They didn't find the map. She did. Now she has 2 questions. Why did her father vanish? And who will kill to make sure she never finds out? It had rained like this the day they buried her mother. Heavy, indecisive drops spattering against the cracked windows of the old house, slipping down as though even the sky wasn't sure whether to sob or hold back. The sound was almost comforting. Almost. Lena's fingers ached from folding sweaters into cardboard boxes. She moved like a ghost, careful not to make noise, as though her mother might step out of the bedroom and scold her for rifling through her things. She kept expecting it, those sharp heels clicking on the warped floorboards, that low voice, too calm for all the damage it could do. But there was only the rain and the faint smell of mothballs that clung to every fabric dot she reached for the last stack of books, thick with dust. Cookbooks, a hymnal, a stack of gardening guides her mother never opened. And then her father's Bible. The leather was cracked, the spine split like an old wound. It slipped from her grasp, hitting the floor with a thud too loud for the silence. The Bible fell open, and the map slid out. It looked ancient, edges browned, creases threatening to tear. A faint scorch mark spiderwebbed across one corner, and there, in the center of a brittle fold, a blood-red X stared up at her like an accusation. She picked it up delicately, afraid it might crumble. Dates lined the margins in her father's sharp, slanted hand. Some crossed out, some circled twice, all in the same red ink, and there it was again, the faint smell of smoke. She rubbed her nose. No, not smoke. Ash. She almost laughed, almost called herself ridiculous. It was probably a camping map, some old road trip plan, or a sermon prop. He had loved his object lessons, but her laugh never came, because she remembered her father's last words before he drove off the night he didn't come back. There are things you'll never forgive me for. Lena, maybe that's safer for you. Her thumb hovered over the X. For one reckless moment, she thought of unfolding the map fully, but her phone buzzed in her back pocket. A text. Unknown number. Do you have it? She dropped the map like it had bitten her. The rain tapped harder against the windows. She stuffed the map back into the Bible, shoved it deep in her bag, and muttered to herself, "It's nothing. Just nothing." But as she packed the last box, she couldn't shake the thought that it had been waiting for her. The apartment felt colder than usual when she let herself in that night. Not cold from the weather cold, like a room recently. Disturbed. She locked the door behind her, double-checking the deadbolt. The boxes from the estate sat untouched in the corner. She stepped around them carefully. The air smelled wrong. Damp, metallic. She switched on the kitchen light and saw them. Her books, every last one ripped from their shelves, lying like gutted animals across the floor. Pages shredded, spines broken, no electronics stolen. Number. Jewelry missing. Just her books. And the Bible wasn't in her bag anymore. She knelt, hands trembling, and lifted one of the torn covers. The faint smell of ash again. Or maybe it was just her imagination clinging to the fear. Lena's phone buzzed on the counter. Same number. You shouldn't have opened it. Her throat went dry. She tried to call back. Straight to voicemail. For the first time in years, she thought of her father's hands, not when they disciplined, but when they fixed her bicycle, when they turned soil in the garden. Hands that shook the last time he touched her shoulder. What were you so afraid of, Dad? The wind rattled the balcony door. A shadow moved outside. Or maybe it was nothing. Maybe. She grabbed the map from under a pile of shredded paperbacks. Her fingers brushed a corner still warm, as if someone had held it minutes ago. One of the dates caught her eye. Tomorrow's date. Circled twice. The balcony door creaked. She froze, staring. Nothing but darkness. No movement now. Maybe they were gone. Maybe they were never there. But Lena couldn't shake the feeling of being studied. The way her father once studied his congregation before saying something that would burn in them for years. Her phone buzzed again. This time, no text. Just a single image, her father, sitting at a diner table. A timestamp from 12 hours before his death. He wasn't alone. Across from him sat a man with the kind of face you forget instantly, except for the jagged scar running from his eye to his jaw. His hand rested over the Bible like a claim. Lena whispered into the quiet, "Who are you?" The map crackled softly in her grip. She traced the blood-red X. The smell of ash thick now, almost choking. "Whatever you are." Her voice broke. "You got him killed, didn't you?" She was 8 when she first saw her father burn a book, not in anger. Not in shame. Just quiet, deliberate flicks of the match as the edges curled and blackened. He didn't speak, didn't notice her watching from the hallway. Just turned one page after another, like scripture, feeding it to flame. He whispered something then. Not to her. To the fire. She never forgot the smell. Years later, Claire found herself clutching another book, this one worn to its spine, the Bible he left her. Tucked in the margins were numbers, coordinates, scribbled like afterthoughts beside verses that promised salvation or wrath. Eden's Hollow. A name that sounded invented, but wasn't. Not on the old paper map she unrolled across her dining table, smoothing its brittle edges with a tea mug and a chipped porcelain bowl. Leftovers of her mother's kitchen, still smelling faintly of rosemary and rust. She didn't notice the kettle had boiled dry. She traced the numbers again. They weren't random. They formed a triangle across a stretch of land northeast of Marrow Creek, deep in the place GPS refused to know. One coordinate was marked with a red X, and beside it, in her father's unmistakable hand, "Where the silence ends." He said it to her that night before the hospital, before he died. His eyes cloudy, his grip too tight around her wrist. The truth is in the Word. She thought he meant the Bible, but maybe he meant this. The room was too quiet now. Not even the hum of the refrigerator. She clicked her pen anxiously, remembering how he used to flinch at that sound. Said it sounded like a countdown. She clicked it once more anyway. Some silences feel like someone else is listening. Her phone buzzed. One name. Ty. Her only remaining thread to the world before all this broke open. She didn't answer. Then came the message, "Hollow's not safe, Claire. Ask around." Kids went missing there. Decades ago. No one looked twice. She stared at the screen. The letters blurred as her eyes found the old receipt lying folded near the map, her father's handwriting on the back. It had been in the Bible too. Faded gas station ink from '89, scribbled beneath. "Forgive me, I had no choice." A receipt for a fuel purchase 20 miles from Eden's Hollow. She opened her laptop, searching again. Eden's Hollow returned. Nothing official, no town website, no coordinates, not even old census records, just urban legends. A single blog post that had been deleted. One cached version remained. She clicked. It loaded slowly, like something hesitant to be seen. A girl named Kendra disappeared in 1991. Last seen with a man described as quiet, with a voice like a sermon. No photos, just drawings. Charcoal sketches of a face too familiar, her father's. Jawline, her father's eyes. The screen dimmed. She slammed it shut. The house creaked. Retention. Spike. But the photo hid something worse. Someone cropped out. She stood and crossed the room, heart thudding against her ribs like it wanted out. Pulled the curtain. Nothing outside but wind and a bird pecking at the mailbox. Still, she locked the door. Old habit. Or new paranoia. She returned to the table and picked up the locket from the map's edge. Her mother's. Empty now. It used to hold a photo of Claire as a baby, but it popped loose years ago. Now it held something else small, unassuming. A USB drive, silent setup. She slipped it into her coat pocket. Just in case, emotional reversal. Claire had once begged to be left alone with her grief. Now she would have given anything for someone to sit with her in this awful quiet. She dialed Ty, hung up before it rang, then texted instead. I'm going. I don't need you to agree. Just ... Tell someone if I don't check in. No reply. She stood, folded the map with care, slid it into the battered leather satchel she hadn't used in years. College bag. Still smelled like spilled ink and fear. As she zipped it shut, she paused, looked around. Everything still felt touched by him. The bookcase he built by hand, the dent in the wall from the night he threw the ashtray, the tiny scar on her wrist where a piece of glass had found her and stayed. She pressed a hand to the memory, then moved on. She printed a ticket one way. No return date. Bus, not plane. She didn't trust skies when her questions lived in the dirt. The printer whirred. The paper slid out warm and heavy, like something alive. She packed quickly. 3 shirts, a flask, the book, the receipt, a note for herself in case she doubted. Later. You're not crazy. You're close. The power flickered, just once. She didn't flinch. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The sky outside had turned from ash to ink. Streetlights sputtered into life, catching her reflection in the window. She looked older, not in the way time intended. In the way truth does. And in the glass behind her, just faint enough to question movement. She spun. Nothing. The door was still locked, wasn't it? She stepped forward. Turned the latch. Still secure. Still. But something was different. She pressed her ear to the wood. No sound. Then slowly walked back to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, her hand shaking just enough to make the ripples dance. She didn't drink it. Just stared. Stared like the water might speak. The fridge clicked on behind her. She jumped. Just a little, and then from the hallway, a draft, just a whisper of air where none should be. She moved slowly, barefoot across the wooden floor. No creaks. That was worse. When she reached the hallway, she saw it. The light beneath. The front door, brighter now. Someone had opened it. She crept closer, breath locked inside her ribs, placed her hand on the knob. Turned it. Open. Nothing. No one. But on the doormat, the Bible. Open. To the verse he marked years ago. Isaiah 45:3. I will give you the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places. And in the margin, she's not gone, just erased. She never noticed the torn receipt was missing. She knelt, touched the page. It was still warm. Footsteps, no. Her own breath echoing back at her. She picked up the book, closed it, and behind her she didn't hear the soft click of her front door unlocking from the outside. She remembered the last time she trusted a map her father's eyes, damp as the paper he folded in front of her, telling her the roads could hide more than they revealed. Claire parked beside a blinking sign that read, "Out of service." The GPS had nothing. That was the point. Eden's Hollow didn't exist. Not in any database, not in any county line. But in her father's handwriting, it bled alive on the map margins. She stepped into the gas station, a squat concrete box under sodium lights that smelled like stale coffee and motor oil. A bell jangled as she opened the door. The clerk looked up, his face a worn page. "Looking for something?" he asked, voice flat, eyes empty. "Eden's Hollow," she said. She held up a printout of her scribbled map. His eyes flickered. He cleared his throat. "Name doesn't ring," then paused. "But people around here. Better be careful." Claire glanced at him. "Why?" He didn't answer. Instead, leaned toward her and dropped a folded slip across the counter. "They'll kill you like they killed him." She didn't expect threats at Pump 80. He watched her, like he half wanted her to tear the note apart. She folded it back and slid it into her coat pocket. "Was he here?" she asked quietly, not sure. The clerk shook his head. People come through. Maps burn, names too. Claire nodded, eyes tracking the slow drip from the roof. She offered payment. He refused. Just stared at her, as if he expected her to vanish. Outside, twilight crept across the pumps. Claire's boots tapped against concrete as she walked around. The SUV, 4/Marks tires, shredded like ribbon cutting into metal. The tire iron lay nearby, abandoned, its socket caked in grime. She sank against the hood, breath shallow. Some quiet moments shout betrayals. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Ty. Are you okay? She stared at it, thumb hovering. But she didn't reply. Instead, a soft voice. You can't stay here. Claire turned to see a woman approaching. Tall, pale in the gas station glow. She wore a faded chambray dress and carried a single suitcase. I've got a spare tire, she said. Her voice was low, like she knew this station too well. Claire met the stranger's gaze. Something in her eyes, a calm that wasn't trust, but recognition. Almost too familiar. I don't even know who you are, Claire said. The woman smiled. A little. Doesn't matter. I know you. Claire's heart tightened. She met eyes that were too still, too present. Echo motif. Those same steady eyes she'd glimpsed in her father's old photos, just before he cut them to half. How do you know me? Claire whispered. The woman knelt, examining the tire. Your father was here. They never let him leave. Claire's breath froze. 2 syllables felt like a blow. She pressed her hand to the torn receipt peeking from her pocket, the one he'd scribbled, "Forgive me" on. Fuel station ink damp from years. The woman straightened. She offered a tire jack and asked softly, "Where did he go?" Claire stared at her. I don't know. He tried to draw truth on a map, the woman said, voice shadowed. They told him Eden's Hollow was a story. But he kept going. Claire swallowed hard. The woman placed the jack under the SUV, worked silently as Claire watched. The lamp. Light glinted off her fingers, clean but rough, like someone who used to fix more than tires. She stood when she was done. Will you help me? Claire asked. I already have. The woman gave a quick nod, almost curt. Claire's eyes flicked to her suitcase. Are you staying? I'm here to see it righted. The woman's voice broke just a little. A flicker of something tender. Loss? Guilt? Fear? My brother vanished out there 20 years ago. I thought it was a bad camp out. Claire realized her vulnerability shifted. She bristled less. Emotional reversal. That's why you know my father found something, Claire murmured. He discovered more. The woman studied her. Nod slow. He saved a girl, my sister. Buried her in the dust. Then they found him, forced him back. Tears dipped in her throat, but she blinked them away. I was the one silenced. Claire moved closer. Though exhaustion pressed on her boots, she stayed. I write letters to people who never answer. The woman touched the suitcase handle. But tonight, I answer yours. Their hands hovered near the jack, near each other. The gas station hum and distant traffic blended around them. Claire's voice cracked. Why help me? The woman looked up. Her eyes glistened beneath the lamp. Because he saved someone you never knew existed. They stood in silence as the tire changed rusted on jack. That the woman packed the tire iron into the case. Eden's Hollow is just beyond those hills, she said. Map lied, but the land remembers. Claire pulled out the receipt, held it toward her. If we go, she said, we start now. The woman nodded. Before the dark swallows the roads. Claire felt tears come, not from fear, from release. The decision cost more than she thought, but not less. They loaded her into the passenger seat, both silent. Claire watched the woman's hands on the wheel. Inside, the heat clicked on. The locket rested on the dash. Empty but whole, catching the station glow, they pulled away. The gas station receded, its lights blinking off behind them. If justice still matters, You'll want the next page. Claire stared past the cracked dials at the hills ahead, trees, black shapes without names. Her father's words echoed. Truth is in the word. She placed the map on her lap. Her hand brushed the red X, and beside it, now in sharper ink, find her. The engine hummed, steady and willing. She felt small, then fierce behind them. The gas station's light winked out in the rearview mirror. Just for a moment, she thought she saw the woman's reflection shift. Her lips curved in a knowing smile, echoing the unspoken tale. They drove on. The hills leaned in, and Eden's Hollow waited. She was 9 when she pressed her lips to her father's Bible, hoping God would answer, but what came back was her mother's voice. He only uses faith like a weapon. That memory pricked her now as she knelt on the threadbare carpet of the motel room. This was no church, no sanctuary. Just a cheap queen bed, patterned wallpaper peeling at corners, and a second Bible resting on a knitstand. It wasn't hers. She'd found it buried under scratchy towels and the woman's suitcase in the cabin next door. The cover was stamped with the same cross as her father's, but the back held a secret, a small, locked drawer carved into the wood. Along its edge, faint digits, 11.1789, the same date circled in her father's. Margin notes by Eden's Hollow. Claire pressed her palm to the drawer. It was cold, closed, silent. She hunted her fingers along the seam. The lock resisted. The storm outside roared, but inside she felt the calm before collapse. Lightning flashed a brutal white flash that flooded the room. She froze, breath-catching. For a second, she thought she saw her mother's face reflected in the dark window mouth, twisted in accusation. But the lightning passed too fast. The drawer lacked a keyhole, only smooth wood. She pressed harder, but it didn't budge. She closed her eyes, letting the cadence of memory fill her mind. Her mother's letter after the divorce lines raked like claws. You think you're saving her. You're destroying her. Her father hadn't defended her. He just stared at the letter, silent. He said nothing. And she learned the weight of unspoken love. Now, alone in this room, she felt small. She knelt and unfolded the Bible to the front page. Her thumb brushed the author's inscription, "For Claire, when the world is too loud." Her father's handwriting, shaky, it used to comfort her. Now it mocked her. The storm's howl rattled the window. The radiator clanked a deep echo in the stillness. Outside, thunder growled low. She sat back on her heels. The drawer beckoned. She needed a tool. Reached into her coat pocket, pulled out the USB silent setup, a promise of proof. But it wouldn't open the drawer. She searched the bed, found the hotel pen on the knitstand. Clicked it, a mechanical rat squeak. She slid its tip into the seam. It didn't catch. She slammed it on the wood. The pen cracked. With it, a wave of anger she hadn't expected. Anger tasted like splinters under her skin. She shoved to her feet and hurled the pen across the room. It skidded under the bed. She exhaled hard, cheeks burning. She realized pride had made her think she could unlock every secret with patience. But this one required force. She moved to the bed and rifled through her satchel. Found the receipt. Old and creased, the one with "Forgive me" in her father's hand. She clutched it, tears prickling. She pressed it into her palm as if its fibers held resolve. She thought of Eden's Hollow and her father's silence. She thought of all the kids who vanished, unmarked graves in his past. She thought of her mother's death and how she never got to ask him why. She slid to the floor and with trembling hands wedged the receipt's edge into the drawer's seam. It caught. She ripped it down the middle. The lumber shuddered. The drawer gave one soft groan, slid open. Claire gasped. The room felt too bright. Then thunder shook the walls. Inside the drawer, a folded photograph, edges waterlogged, ink smeared. She unfolded it gently. It showed her father standing in front of an unrecognizable building, a dark figure behind him. She didn't know who. The back had scribbles, coordinates, and Eden's Hollow. She tucked it gently back. Next, a small brass key, ornate, tarnished. Its metal was cold, intimate. Symbolic object, the key to his secrets and maybe her future. Lastly, a tiny vial filled with dark liquid and flecks of something she couldn't place. Ink? Blood? Soil? She held it to the lamp. Light shone through something floating, suspended. A fragment of something living. She nearly dropped it. Emotional reversal. She came here seeking understanding, not horror. Now she felt both. The power flickered. The lamp buzzed. The room plunged into near darkness. She gripped the vial tighter. She stood, leaning against the nightstand. The key felt heavy in her pocket, like responsibility. The photograph tucked inside her coat pocket. It was too fragile to hold. Outside, wind howled, rattling the siding. Rain pounded like insistence. She realized she was trapped. But the storm was on her side. It gave cover, urgency. She slipped the photograph into her jacket. The vial she tucked into the drawer. She'd need more light to examine it. But she needed the key now. She moved to the nightstand and opened the top drawer. Inside, the motel keycard lay atop crumpled tissues. She grabbed it, slid it into the lock of her satchel, thoughtless. It was a motel key that would unlock a room she wouldn't stay in. Antagonist depth surfaced in her mind. The motel owner. Soft-spoken, anxious when offering the room yesterday. He'd warned her of storms. His hands had trembled when he handed over the key. She'd thought it was fear of damage deposit. Now she realized it was deeper. Fear of losing someone who might vanish mid-storm. He'd likely lost someone before, maybe a daughter who never came home. That trembling wasn't greed, it was guilt. She exhaled. Felt less alone. The lamp flickered again, dying in the sudden darkness. Claire's fingers found the brass key. She clicked it through her fingers once, then slid to the mattress lying flat, clutching the key against her heart. She reached for the USB in her coat pocket, safe and ready. She thought of Eden's Hollow and the missing children. The key was more than a tool. She had to find what lock it belonged to. Retention spike. But the keys don't tell you which doors hide the heartache. Rain hammered harder. One of the old bulbs overhead popped. Purple glare faded to red death. She closed her eyes and slowed her breath. Let the storm's rhythm soothe her. This night had become a reckoning. She'd come seeking a drawer. She'd found a key and proof she was moving deeper, closer. She thought of her mother's words, scars that ran through her bones. She thought of her father's silence. Now he'd given her keys to secrets and wounds, but also to healing. She sat up, pressed the key between her teeth for a moment, metaphoric, intimate. She reached for the locket on the dresser, the one she'd carved for her mother. It lay open, her photo gone, empty, just metal and missing. She placed the brass key inside, closing it softly. Silent setup. The key inside the locket, hidden in plain sight. She laid back, the key resting over her heart. The photograph warmed in her coat pocket. Her phone buzzed, a single notification. She ignored it. The storm rattled the walls like an ally, vocalizing truths. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The lamp sputtered one last breath, then died. Darkness swallowed the room. Claire pressed her palm over the locket, over the key, felt its weight. Then she heard it. Footsteps, soft footsteps from the hallway. Leather solace on thin carpet. In the dark, even footsteps feel like accusations. Claire didn't move. She held her breath. The doorknob rattled. The soft click of the key turning in the lock. She was 7 the night they prayed. Kneeling by his side, her small hands folded, the glow of the lamp splitting their shadows on the wall. Outside, fingers of darkness pressed against the window pane. She glanced at her father's profile, jaw set, eyes distant, and learned that faith could be a thin shield. Now Claire pressed play on the battered recorder, voice shaking. The motel room was damp with storm memory, wallpaper curling. Like old prayers. The tape crackled, rust hiss, then his voice. "If you hear this." "They found me." She sat motionless, heart chucking like a frightened bird. The walls seemed to inhale. Flashback flooded her. The hush of prayer, her father's whisper in the darkness. "Keep us safe." Then the chapel burning voiceover memories of Eden's Hollow's demise. She shivered. She stood, pacing the carpet. The vial of dark particles sat on the knitstand. Next to it, the brass key glinted, both remnants from the locked drawer she'd forced open. She traced the key's teeth with a fingertip. It felt like a wound. She didn't expect her father's voice to sound so broken. The recorder clicked as the tape continued. His voice was breathless. "They watched us pray while the flames took the chapel. I thought I'd died there twice." Her throat closed. Flames, chapel, cult, Eden's Hollow wasn't just erased, it was torched by the very faith it professed. She sank onto the bed, pulled the locket from her coat pocket, the silver tarnished, empty. She pressed it to her chest, a relic of her mother. Now it held a USB drive silent setup. Proof of everything. Lightning flashed, illuminating the Bible on the knitstand. She picked it up, thumb on the marked verse. Isaiah 45:3. Treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places. Underlined thrice in the margin. She opened the book to the back, found her father's bookmark sermon notes with a phrase circled. "They'll kill faith." She stared. It felt prophetic. She pressed play again. The tape hissed and paused. Retention spike. But the audio hid. Something worse, static, like static allegiance. A rustle at the door made her jump. The storm was too loud, not that. A soft footstep in the hall. She froze, heard a cough. Mechanical, weary. Her mind picked back up the motel owner's face, the way his hands trembled when he handed her the key. She'd thought it caution. Now, it felt like guilt, like he knew something about hidden rooms, hidden losses. She exhaled, thinking of his shaking lips' antagonist depth, a man bent by fear, not malice, offering refuge despite his walls. Claire pressed the locket closed, jiggling. The USB inside. She didn't need comfort. She slid off the bed and moved toward the window. Rain slapped the glass. She placed a hand on it and remembered those 7-year-old shadows reaching. Now she was reaching back. She retrieved the vial, held it up in the glow of the hall light that slipped beneath the door. The particles drifted in the liquid soil. Ash, tears, a remnant of Eden's Hollow in glass. Symbolic object, proof of what he carried. She tucked it into her coat pocket, warming it. Emotional. Reversal. Pride at uncovering secrets had curdled to dread at their cost. She returned to the recorder. The tape continued. "If they find this, promise me you'll speak. Promise me you'll finish it. Let the soil remember." Her breath caught. He sounded tired, beaten, and yet hopeful she might carry weight he couldn't. She cupped the recorder to her chest. It felt like holding a heartbeat that belonged to someone she barely knew, but lost too. Retention spike. And the tape hid something worse, the silence after his plea. The recorder fell silent. She hit stop. No hiss, nothing. Outside, thunder rolled, and the hallway light flickered. The footsteps returned closer now. She swallowed, mind racing. Could be the owner. Could be someone else. But she realized she was no longer asking permission. She was defending truth. She sank to the floor and retrieved the vial, pressed it beside the recorder. Then took the key, tucked it into her jacket. 4 items. Tape, vial, key, USB. A catalog of lost lives. She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The storm raged. Shadows moved again. She pulled the locket over her heart. "If justice still matters, you'll want the next page." Her phone buzzed gently. Ty's name. She stared at it, then turned it face down. The hallway light dimmed. The room's hum vanished. The storm's voice became distant, indifferent. She held tight to the recorder. The footsteps paused. Her heart hammered like a warning bell. She closed her eyes. Listened. And then the hallway door clicked. A scream swallowed by silence, merging her voice with Eden's Hollow's ghosts. She was proud of finding the map. Thought she'd unmasked her father's secret, tracing his handwriting, following his hope. Now kneeling in the damp hollow soil under a waning moon, she realized the map wasn't his. He'd always been following someone else's path. Claire pressed the old parchment against her palm. Ink faded, but the red X glowed like a silent accusation. She brushed the soil from the edges, her breath shallow. Her mother's midwife had once said the land remembers birthplaces. This map remembered origins instead of destinations. She read the faded signature in the corner. E. Mallory, Elijah Mallory. Her maternal grandfather, commune leader, not her father. Her chest twisted. The communal birth ceremonies, the hymns under cedar roofs, all hinted now in her memory. That red X wasn't a waypoint. It was a burial marker carved by his hand, the man who lost his daughter to bloodlines. Her heart thundered like a warning. She remembered the stories of the commune's collapse. The fire didn't kill them. Shame did. Disappearances, accusations of abuse, whispers of children buried without rights. She traced a tear on her mother's final letter. I gave her life in a place that would never accept her. Now Claire felt the weight of inherited guilt. She brushed earth on the map's folds, careful not to tear it. The locket, empty but warm, lay at her side, her mother's memory, her burden. She opened it slowly, revealing the USB inside. Silent setup. She'd hidden it in plain sight, a seed of future reckoning. Wind rustled through the trees like paused breaths. The echo of her mother's lullaby shimmered in her ears, once a melody of comfort, now a requiem of lost. She drew the brass key from her pocket, fitted against the map's creases like a compass. It didn't unlock history, it illuminated it. She placed the blade she carried beside the map and key, a promise that she could dig, could unearth what must stay hidden. Emotional reversal. Proud archaeologist, now a mourner for truths too. Heavy to bear. Claire knelt and pressed her fingers to the soil under the X, tracing its outline. Her nails grazed cloth. She shivered. Darkness pressed. Memories of her mother's hands wrapping Claire in blankets as a baby, whispering, "You're safe now." That blanket was gone now, buried here beneath this X. She dug slowly, each scoop bringing up dirt that smelled of decayed leaves and old fear. Her fingers found fabric moth-eaten, but intact. She pulled it free. A child's dress, small and delicate, patterned with tiny flowers, once vibrant, now muted and stained. Tears broke free. She pressed the dress to her face, inhaling fusty flowers and soil. It smelled of innocence lost. The dress trembled in her hands like a fragile heartbeat. She sat back, dress in lap, and traced her fingers along the floral print. Her legs ached. Above her, stars blinked. No moon. Just the hollow's watchful darkness. She thought of Elijah, standing here, burying something sacred. The weight of his faith must have been crushing. Antigonus depth. He hadn't buried a secret. He'd buried confusion, failure, and daughter he couldn't protect. She imagined him, head bowed, placing the dress here, his bloodline tethered in cloth and earth. She wrapped the dress inside the map, laid the brass key atop it. The locket fell open beside, catching starlight. Symbolic object, memory, access, inheritance, all bound in soil and moonlight. Claire realized she'd come seeking answers. She found responsibility, her ancestors' sins and her own questions now lived in this dress. She rose slowly, clutching the bundle. Legs trembling, she held the USB and the vial in one hand, dress and key in the other. She looked up at the hollow's rim. The trees leaned away, reverent. Or wary, it was hard to tell which. A single hoot of an owl braced the night. Echo motif, like her mother's lullaby twisted into warning. Her phone buzzed. The glow from a new message. They saw your post. You okay? She didn't reply. Words felt small. She needed space to breathe. Beside her the wind's sigh carried. Words unsaid. They erased us here. She's still here. She laid the items on a flat stone. Map, dress, key, USB, vial, locket. A shrine of reckoning. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. Claire knelt, pressing her palm to the stone's flat face. She said nothing. The wind whispered back. Her father's legacy unraveled. Her grandfather's began to unravel. Now it was hers. To weave, she scooped earth over the items, burying them here, under the red X. Her tears fell in the dirt. The dress trembled, nearly swallowed. She let it go. This place would remember. She touched the ground once more. Felt the hollow's breath, alive and aching. Finally, she stood. She brushed dirt from her palms. Folded the map, pressed the key into its crease, storing bones and secrets. Her phone light dimmed beside the items, unread messages stacked. Night swallowed her footprints as she walked away. The hollow kept its silence. Beneath the red X, the earth sighed, and the child's dress lay still, holding a heartbeat no one would name. She was 6 when her father carried her through the hollow fields, humming church hymns until she fell asleep. Moonlight on her eyelids, safe in his arms. Now moonlight was the enemy, painting muddy footprints across her motel carpet prints, not there before the storm. Claire pressed her palm to her chest, feeling the locket and USB against her heart. The locket was empty, remembering what it once held, her mother's face, now erased. The USB pulsed promise. Behind her, the door clicked shut. Light footsteps on linoleum. Not the storm. She rose, boots silent. Twilight pooled at the window. The footprints led from the door to the bed. Rainwater carried in, pooling at her toes like tears. She knelt and examined them. Boot prints too small to be the motel owners. Someone slept here. Someone waited. Her flashlight lay on the nightstand. She clicked it, being jagged under her palm. She followed the prints to the dresser, where the Bible lay, key tucked beside it. She knelt, pressed the key, took it. In her pocket, the USB warmed. Footsteps behind the wall, distant but present. She froze. Then a soft voice, familiar, cautious. Claire. She spun. The woman behind the desk, motel proprietor, stood in the doorway. Her face was pale, frightened, like a mother afraid for a child she couldn't save. The woman closed the door softly. I didn't mean to scare you. I found them, footprints. Claire looked past her at the window. Who was it? The woman shook her head. I didn't see, I just heard. She moved closer, hands clasped. Your mother was supposed to die here. You were too. Claire staggered. The words landed heavy. Her breath stuttered. The woman sank onto the bed edge. It's why I gave you the key. People come looking for that map. They don't always leave. Claire pressed the key in her palm. The metal was familiar but cold. Why help me? The woman's eyes glistened. I lost my daughter to darkness years ago, she said, voice trembling. She wandered off in a storm. They found her body near Eden's Hollow. I thought, the guilt. You reminded me of her. Her confession. Felt like a confession not meant for her. Claire blinked back something. Sympathy. Maybe even forgiveness. Emotional reversal. She thought herself alone. Now she saw warning in the woman's fear. They moved to the bed's foot. Flashlight beam shook between them. Claire placed the map on the bedspread. It unfolded quietly. Red X bleeding through the fold's resting place for memory and shame. The woman touched the map's corner. Finger cap traced ink. It breathes, she whispered. The hollow breathes. Claire swallowed. The footprints across her floor weren't from memory. They were from someone here, someone awake, someone watching. She looked at the prints again. They ended at the window. No prints led away. She pressed a palm to the pane. It was locked. Moonlight pooled. Outside, silent witness. The woman stood, stepping back. "I'm scared for you," she said. "I didn't just give you refuge, I gave you warning." Claire spoke softly. "I don't know what I want, any more answers or silence." The woman nodded. "The hollow offers neither." Claire's thumb brushed the red X. She thought of that child's dress buried under the X, the footprints of another. Maybe someone trying to steal the map, or bury it forever. She folded the map in half, then half again. It felt like folding grief, never neat, never gone. "If justice still matters, you'll want the next page." She pressed the key into her jeans pocket and slipped the USB into the locket. A silent setup. Evidence and confession embedded with memory. The woman reached out, stopped a breath from Claire's face. Hesitated, then pulled back. She lay a trembling photograph next to the map, a crayon drawing of a girl in the hollow, her daughter's likeness. The girl wore the same dress. Claire took it, held it gently. Tears pressed at her lids. The drawing was innocence and accusation. The drawing trembled like a pulse. The woman's face braced. "I saw it in his cabin," she said. "On his desk, next to that Bible. He kept it. He couldn't destroy it." Claire lifted her head. "He," the woman's gaze faltered. "He thought of her even as he buried her." The hush between them stretched. Claire folded the paper carefully, pressed it between map pages. She looked toward the door. Moonlight shivered on the linoleum. The footprints gleamed white in its glow. The woman whispered, "He found salvation." "In truth, even when it cost him everything," Claire exhaled. She realized then, the antagonist wasn't menace, but a grief-stricken witness. Her fear humanized danger. She stood, the woman backing away, leaving ragged breathing behind. Claire moved to the window. She unlocked it, swung it open. Cold air slapped her face. She leaned out, scanning the black yard. No movement. Just silence. She climbed through, boots on earth. She glanced back. Map, dress drawing, Bible evidence laid bare in the room. She didn't close the window. Claire stepped onto wet grass, bare feet sinking into earth that breathed. She turned back to the window. The woman watched from inside, wide-eyed. Claire whispered, "I'll finish this." From behind her, a click. A cylinder sliding home. She froze, spinning. A gun barrel appeared in the open window. A voice, low and certain. "Hand me the map. You're next." Moonlight fell on the map's folds as the gun's shadow stretched across it, and the hollow exhaled. She was 2 the night her mother pressed her into her father's arms and whispered, "Keep her safe." The memory flickered now in the tunnel's dim glow. A half-remembered lullaby swallowed by stone. Claire followed the woman's lantern deeper beneath Eden's hollow. Walls dripped with age, roots clinging like desperate hands. The map's coordinates led them here, a sealed chamber that breathing quietly, waiting. Claire's breath echoed. Each step pressed the locket empty, foolish laughter of memory against her ribs. She clenched it. USB hidden inside, proof and silence wrapped together. Her pulse slapped against her ears like a warning bell. Past a fork in the tunnel. The woman paused, eyes on Claire's silhouette. She reached out, brushing the strand of Claire's hair back, trembling. Unspoken apology. A mother's gesture, though this woman carried none of her own. "Are you ready?" she whispered. Claire swallowed. Her voice felt distant when it came. "Ready as I'll ever be." They stepped into the chamber. It was vast, stone arches curling overhead, dust motes dancing in the lantern's sweep. In the center, dozens of small bones lay scattered in a shallow pit. Some rounded like tiny skulls, ribs like pale combs. They glistened in the dull yellow light, innocent, stripped to marrow. She knelt. Her throat seized. She touched a femur. It snapped under her fingertip. The sound crackled like a submission. She froze. Bone on bone sounded like confession. The woman knelt beside her, whispering in a crackled voice. They couldn't bear to bury them with prayer. Claire's hand quivered. She brushed dust from a child's tooth. Hair, brittle, golden strands. Between her fingers. The locket's chain rattled in her pocket like a memory reclaiming her. Flashback flared, her father teaching her to hold still in church. His fingers interlaced around hers, teaching faith felt safe. Now he carried fear, instead of faith beneath his words. She looked to the lantern's glow. The woman's face was pale, hollowed by guilt. Antagonist depth. She wasn't guiding Claire to revenge. She was leading her through her own grief, scared, trembling. Burdened by the bones she whispered over, the woman offered a cloth. Claire wrapped the tooth in it, shoved it into her pocket. Symbolic object, a reminder of what's lost and what must be remembered. Her voice cracked. "Why show me this?" The woman's eyelids blinked slow. "So you know he tried to stop it. That your father exhumed the evidence." She nodded toward the journal in Claire's satchel. He wrote every name, every date, every girl who never got a stone. Claire reached, pulled her coat open. Journal lay there, his handwriting, furious, loving, broken. She opened to the latest entry, ink smudged. He called them daughters. Then he called them monsters. Her fingers traced the words. Tears spilled. She blinked them away, emotional reversal. She'd come here seeking her father's betrayal. Now she found his broken courage. She closed the journal. He died trying to save me. The woman's breath caught. She stared at the bones. He did here. Her voice cracked, raw. They killed him when he tried to lead you out. Claire stood. She knelt before the bones again, pulling out the USB. She pressed it into her hand. A seed of accusation weighed heavier than any bone. She realized revenge wouldn't undo this. But truth might heal. From her satchel, she withdrew a torn receipt from the motel, pressed it beside the bones, a relic of pilgrimage to this place of death. Tears glinted in her eyes. That receipt led her here. The bones didn't tell lies. She pressed the photo from the motel owner, the scribbled drawing of the girl in the small dress, into the pit as a grave marker. Candlelight threw shadows behind her, dancing. Echo motif. Twilight tremble from earlier prayers, now repeated in the waydate. Dark. The woman guided Claire to stand, helped her press the Zemble paper into the earth his map grade, red X over the mass grave. The map was never his, yes, but she still drew the circle, burned his errors into her memory. Claire stepped back. Dust rose around her boots. She felt small amid the testament of broken flesh and failed faith. She closed her eyes. Thought, he carried this alone. Now she must carry it too. The woman's voice trembled near her ear. You carry him now. Claire opened her eyes. Iconic reversal. She went from child abandoned to daughter who inherits truth and punishment. She swallowed. The bones seemed to sigh. She knelt and placed the locket on the ground, beside the bones. Opened. She dropped the littered key beside it. Iconic object. Two carriers of memory and revelation. She stood, picked up her journal, USB, map. The bones waited. She covered the chamber grate with earth thrown in handfuls, burying her promise. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. She brushed the dust from her coat, returned the lantern to the woman. They turned to leave. But Claire paused. She pressed a finger to the lantern's glass. The woman looked back at her, hollow eyes widening, as if she'd seen something else. Claire whispered, "Thank you." The woman swallowed, nodding, hands brushing her coat. They walked back toward the tunnel mouth, step by step. The air thinned, cold, but lighter, like breathing after confession. Claire emerged first, the rain catching her face. The woman followed. They stood in the clearing as rain washed the chamber's stain behind them. Claire looked at her hands. Jewelry, locket closed around USB, map folded in her bag. She placed one hand over her heart, felt the locket's weight, the bones' weight, the map's weight, the key's promise. The woman raised a lantern high. Light wavered across their faces. She met Claire's eyes. They searched for forgiveness, for absolution, for humanity, antagonist depth. Her fear recognized the cost of memory, now shared. Claire exhaled. Her breath let the raindrop fall from her chin. Your father didn't leave you. He died trying to save you. Moonlight splintered through the trees, and the bones exhaled silence. She was 10 when her father showed her how to fold grief into ashes by feeding prayer candles until they collapsed in on themselves. The memory pulsed now as Claire knelt beside the shallow fire pit, journal burning in her hands. Flames curled up the pages, his confessions, her inheritance, every daughter's name scrawled in torn handwriting. The commune's descendants had arrived at dawn, their faces half angry, half ash, guns leaking smoke in their grips. They crept through wildflowers, stepping into the clearing like ghosts given flesh. Claire didn't flinch as the journal pages caught light, the scent of paper and truth swirling. Her pulse thumped louder than their footsteps. She tossed the burning pages into the fire. They curled upward, choking hiss as ink and lies burned together. She locked eyes with the youngest man, maybe 18, jaw tight, eyes full of fear she recognized. Antagonist depth. He was scared not of her, but of what she might prove that his bloodline carried. More shame than salvation. She pressed play on a hidden loudspeaker clipped to her jacket. Her father's voice echoed. They watched us pray while the flames took the chapel. I thought I'd died there twice. The recording shattered the dawn. Claire's lips trembled, voice in solitude, yet it carried like a verdict. Locals. Cane farmers, kids on tractors, their faces pale in sunrise. They gathered at the clearing's edge, holding pitchforks, garden tools, anger and curiosity. The descendants froze. Silence roared louder than any gun. Claire stood, coat open, arms raised. The bones she'd buried beneath the hollow loosed their secret. And now her father reclaimed his voice as weapon. They buried our children to cover. Execution, she yelled, voice splitting sky and dust. They called it ritual. They called it prayer. Pages burned away in the pit. The gunman's finger twitched. Another clicked the safety off. Smoke drifted. She looked at the young man. Again, your mother died in that chapel. She survived the fire until they took her again. He blinked, gun lowered, just a little. Flames leapt higher. The wind shifted west. Claire stepped forward, calm, because someone had to speak for those who couldn't. The descendants wavered. Some stepped back. Others advanced. One pointed a shotgun. Claire reached into her pocket USB, now clenched. She held it out. To end this, you'll need proof. She pressed a palm to her locket inside. Her mother's photo had long ago burned. Only chain remained, catching sunlight like memory's metal. She said nothing more. A figure in the crowd, a farmer, raised his voice. We've heard the rumors, but proof? Claire tapped the loudspeaker. Her father's words rang again. If they find this, promise me you'll speak. Let the soil remember. His voice broke. His final confession. It stabbed through heartbeats, through fear. A few descendants dropped their weapons. Others held theirs frozen, like they didn't want to anger ghosts. Claire watched. She felt hollow, small. Pride had brought her here. Now she felt sorrow because endings aren't triumphs. Their wounds left open, waiting. Emotional reversal. She came expecting triumph, found grief instead. The gunfire began. One shot ricocheted off stone. Claire dove behind a fallen log, ash raining from the burning pit, gunpowder scent mixing with flame. Bullets cut through smoke. Locals dove too, splitting into small pockets of chaos. Claire crawled toward the speaker, pulling wires, smashing it to silence. Sparks flared. The fire flared back, hungry. She scrambled, fumbling for her bag. USB, vial key, map evidence to rebuild truth. She slung the satchel over her shoulder, paused. Gunfire had stopped. Only the crackling pit remained. And a child's laugh, soft, spectral, echoing across the clearing. Like a lullaby she'd half remembered. She froze in the smoke. A shadow moved, and the young descendant knelt by the pit, picking up a charred page. Tears in his eyes. He looked at her, gun useless in his hand. He whispered, "I'm sorry." Claire swallowed. She nodded slowly. "If justice still matters, you'll want the next page." She stood, turned her back on the burning pit. The crowd parted. As she walked, some followed, others stayed, mouths parted in quiet remorse. The sun climbed as the fire consumed the pit, burying journal and ashes together. The embers flared. Claire reached the edge of the clearing, shoulders tight. She didn't look back except once. The child's laugh again, louder, hopeful. Maybe a girl, maybe hers. She didn't know. But she carried her father's voice, the evidence, the wounds. Behind her, the hollow burned. One child's laugh lingered. In the smoke, and the flame swallowed silence. She was 10 the first time she saw her mother cry. It was past midnight, and Claire had crept down the hallway for water. Through the cracked door, she watched her mother on the kitchen floor, lipstick smeared, knees drawn, sobbing into a dish towel. A bottle of gin tilted beside her like a toppled chess piece. Claire never asked what broke her, and her mother never offered the truth. Now, years later, Claire stood at the cemetery gate, one hand clenched around a paper bundle, light as air, dark as regret. The ashes of the map whispered against her palm. Grief was supposed to be heavy. This one was made of wind. The gravel under her shoes crunched louder than it should have. No birdsong, no breeze, just rows of names that outlasted the mouths who'd spoken them. Her mother's grave sat in the shade of a crooked cedar, untouched by flowers. The stone was modest, gray, a clean lie carved in serifed font. Beloved wife, loving mother. Claire set the ash-wrapped map down on the cold granite and crouched, the same way she had as a girl, listening through walls. "I'm not here to forgive you," she said. "I just want the ghost to shut up." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of burnt paper. Beneath it, moss, rust, a hint of old rain. She pressed her fingers to the base of the stone where ants moved in frantic patterns. The guilt didn't live in her chest anymore. It lived in her hands, in her silence. But the photo hid something worse. Claire closed her eyes and saw it again. The tunnel, the bones, her father's handwriting. "Forgive me." Just that. No name, no reason. Maybe he meant her. Maybe he meant himself. The words had survived fire. Her own voice, years ago, yelling at him through the screen door. "If you're not staying, don't come back." He hadn't, until now. The ashes shifted in her grip as she rose. She felt the edges of the burned paper still curled inward, as if trying to keep its secrets. The blood-red X, now gone, had been inked over burial. Not discovery. She'd carried that lie across counties, across graves. And now it was dust. The cemetery was empty. But she could feel someone watching. Or maybe that was just memory. She sat down on the grass beside the grave. Her coat pooled around her like the childhood blanket she used to hide beneath, back when. The house smelled of nail polish and fury. She could hear her mother's voice in the back of her head, still sharp, still certain. "Your father's weakness will drown you if you let it." But the weakness was hers. The mother who'd run, not to protect Claire, but to protect her own story. "I know the truth now," Claire whispered. "You didn't save me from him. He saved me from you." The tree above creaked. A single leaf, let go. In her pocket was the scorched corner of the map that had refused to burn. The rest had turned to soot, but this one piece lingered, "Forgive me," etched along the curve of a faded margin. No coordinates, no code. Just apology too late to matter. But the silence behind it roared. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't look. Whoever it was could wait. The dead had earned this hour. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. She took out the little tin box she'd found at the base of the hollow where her father's voice had once lived in tape. She opened it now. Inside, a scrap of a church bulletin, a rusty house key, and a half-melted wax seal. Nothing that made sense. But everything did. The torn corner of the bulletin read only 3 legible words. They watched us. Claire traced them with her thumb. The echo of a child's prayer scratched against the edge of her memory, her father's voice beside her, trembling. And outside the window, that night, shadows had moved. Her father hadn't been running. He'd been hunted. She pulled her knees up to her chest and watched the sky turn milk blue. The first light of morning touched the top of the cedar tree like a hand seeking penance. It did not find any. Her fingers trembled, finally cold. A crow called in the distance, sharp, irritated. It landed near the next grave over and tilted its head, watching her. Bold, unafraid. She met its eyes. Something passed between them. Recognition. Maybe, or warning. I wanted to believe it was just trauma, she said aloud. All of it. A child's bad dream. The crow didn't blink, but the dress in the ground was real. The tunnel was real. The woman who'd guided her through the under-chapel hallways had cried when she saw the locket Claire carried. Said it once belonged to her own sister. Said Claire's mother had worn it until the fire. That woman's scarred hands had trembled when she handed Claire the journal. She wasn't a monster. Just a survivor, carved hollow by silence. Even the wicked had someone they'd tried to save. Claire took the last folded edge of the map, the forgive me, and crushed it slowly in her hand. She brought it to her lips, breathed into the ash, and let it fall across the grave. You're free now, she said softly, and so am I. The ashes disappeared into the wind. She was 8 the first time she wrote a letter she never sent. Folded it into a heart, then ripped it into 1,000 pieces before anyone could read it. It said, I miss you, but Mom says I shouldn't. The pieces scattered in the fireplace. She'd watched them burn, waiting for the guilt to leave with the smoke. It didn't single quotes t. Now, 2 decades later, she opened the motel drawer and found what looked like forgotten receipts or maybe bills. But beneath the curled edges and dust, there were envelopes yellowed, hand addressed in a script she hadn't seen since childhood. They all began the same way, Claire. She sat on the edge of the bed, trembling. There were 13 of them, maybe more. Some torn open, some sealed. A few stained at the corners like someone had held them too tightly with wet hands. The first letter dated back to the year he disappeared. Dear Claire, your mother won't tell you where I've gone. She might say I left because I wanted to. That I didn't love you enough, that I broke us. None of it is true. She didn't realize she was holding her breath until her vision went glassy. The motel room blurred brown carpet, beige wallpaper. A single lamp flickering overhead. The hum of the mini-fridge was the only sound. She read it aloud. The sound of her own voice cracked in the quiet. I didn't mean to vanish, she whispered through his words. I meant to find a way back. She touched the envelope again. There was a smear of blue pen on the back, like it had been folded. Too soon. On another, a water ring. Coffee, or maybe tears. She opened the next. I dream of your laugh. Of you in that yellow coat, chasing rain. The house smelled like cinnamon. You kept asking where God lived. I told you in your chest. Do you remember that? She remembered. The coat, the question. His hand on her back, warm through layers. The lie, but the photo hid something worse. She dug into her backpack and pulled out the old locket. The one her mother swore was from a yard sale. Inside was a tiny pressed photo of her as a baby, her father holding her. She'd never noticed the scar across his temple until now. It wasn't a small thing. It looked surgical. Or inflicted. Her voice trembled again. She read more letters. They grew darker. I'm sorry I let them scare me. I should have shouted the truth. I should have taken you when I had the chance. But I thought I could fix it from the inside. I thought I could protect you both. She saw her mother standing in the hallway mirror, whispering to no one. He's weak. He doesn't understand what we've built. Claire turned the envelope over and over. She found another letter, one dated 2 months before the fire at Eden's Hollow. It was shorter. More frantic. If you ever find this place, don't believe what they tell you. The word is not God, it's control. I tried to stop it. I failed. She pressed her hand to her chest. The silence in the room changed, became heavier. Like the air had turned to glass. The map was gone, now burned at her mother's grave. But she remembered the red X, the way it bled into the corner, where the child's dress had been buried. She reached for the drawer again. Behind the letters was a folded cloth, thin cotton, faded with age. Inside it, a photograph. Her father, sitting beside a man she didn't recognize. The man's eyes were hollow, familiar, and in his hand a rolled-up map. She looked closer. It wasn't her father's map. It was her grandfather's, the same one her mother had once said never existed. Her father had been hunting the truth. Her mother had been hiding it. I hated you, Claire whispered to the paper. For years. I hated you because she made it easy. She looked around the room. It was the same one she'd stayed in when she first came back to the Hollow. She hadn't realized until now this was where her father had stayed too. The same table. The same cracked window. She sat cross-legged on the floor and spread the letters out like a shrine. The locket lay in the center. She picked one more envelope. No address. No stamp, just her name again, as if he couldn't stop saying it even. When no one would hear, they told me I had to choose. I chose you. I'd do it again. Her shoulders collapsed. She pressed the letter to her chest like a prayer and wept. A knock came at the door, soft, like someone afraid of interrupting. She didn't move at first. Then, through the cheap wood, a voice. Claire, the neighbor woman. The one with the too tight curlers and the mug that always said, "Don't talk before coffee." Claire wiped her face. I heard something. Are you okay? She looked around the room, the letters, the photo, the silence, and the shape her grief had taken. Finally something real, something raw. She walked to the door and pressed her forehead to it. I don't know yet, she said, and for the first time in her life, she meant it. She was 5 when she first saw something grow where nothing should. A crack in the pavement near the old chapel steps, sprouting with a wild yellow weed. Her mother called it disobedient. Her father, quietly amused, called it hope. She didn't know which one to believe. Now, 25 years later, Claire stood where the chapel used to be. Nothing remained but charred ribs of wood and scorched concrete veins. The air still held the echo of something wrong. Like grief hadn't finished speaking. The hollow was ash and memory now. The trees that bordered the ruins hadn't dared inch closer. Even nature held its breath here. She carried only one thing in her pocket. His ring. Her fingers curled around it, a small gold band, scuffed at the edge, worn thin. She'd found it tucked inside his final letter, the one he hadn't finished. The one that ended mid-sentence. If you make it back here, bury, and then nothing. The ring was meant to be buried. She knew that now. Beneath her boots, the ground had softened. Rains had come, seasons had passed. But the pain hadn't eroded. Not entirely. Claire stepped over what once was a cellar door. Now nothing but iron hinges and ghost outlines. She followed the old map's memory, the muscle memory her body had retained. Even after burning it down toward where the chamber had been, she expected rot, stillness, maybe even the bones again. But something else had taken root. One sapling. Small, frail, but green. It grew from the precise center of the pit, where the bones of those children, of his children, had once been hidden like sins under floorboards. How did something so alive grow from a grave? She dropped to her knees, breath caught behind her ribs. The sapling's leaves shimmered, almost translucent. A single raindrop clung to its edge like it didn't want to fall. The ground was soft enough to dig with her hands. She pulled soil back slowly, reverently. Not to unearth, but to give. Claire reached into her pocket. The ring was warm. As if it had been waiting for this dot. This was the only promise he never broke. She buried it at the roots. No words. Just breath. Just silence. And memory. A time when she was 6, and he let her braid his hair, pretending he was a princess in hiding. Her mother had watched with disgust, muttered men should not bow to girls. Her father only smiled and said, "We all bow to love eventually." The sapling swayed slightly. No wind, just breath. She brushed dirt from her fingers, sat beside it, let her body settle. But the photo hid something worse. In her bag was the old family portrait taken before the fire, before the fleeing, before her name was erased from every document the commune owned. Her mother's smile was painted on taut. Her hand gripped Claire's shoulder too hard. Her father stood behind them both, hand in his pocket, the ring missing even then. Claire had once thought he left by choice. Now she knew. He stayed. Died here because he'd tried to stop the rituals. They watched us pray, and they watched us burn. She looked up. A hawk circled far above, alone. What if he saw this moment? Would it be enough? She closed her eyes. The commune was gone. But echoes lived in the soil, in her blood. She'd spent her whole life trying to forget something she never fully knew. Now she couldn't unknow it. Couldn't unsee what lay in the dark beneath family. Her mother had fled, but not to save her. To save face. That was her wound, vanity over truth. Cowardice stitched into the hem of every bedtime prayer. But even cowards bleed. Claire imagined her mother standing here, where the sapling now grew. Would she have pulled it up by the roots, muttering, "No daughter of mine needs forgiveness"? Maybe, but somewhere inside that cold woman, there must have been fear. Real fear. Of what would happen if Claire ever came back. That fear meant something. Claire pressed a flat stone over the buried ring. Not to mark it. To protect it. Her father had once said, "Truth doesn't need to be loud. Just buried where the right hands can find it." She whispered, "I found it." And something eased inside her. For years she thought forgiveness meant weakness. Letting go meant surrender. But here, in this ruined field, she felt something else. Not peace, but its cousin. Clarity. She stood. Took one last look at the sapling. A breeze stirred. Then stopped. Then stirred again. Then quiet. Until the faintest sound. A child's laugh. Carried from somewhere not here. Not quite now. And then silence. The snow had started falling again, quiet as breath. It reminded her of the day her daughter was born. No cries. Just that stunned silence that fills the air when something breaks and something begins. She sat by the window, coffee long gone cold in her hand, watching her daughter play in the backyard. Red coat, mittens too big. The scarf Claire had knitted herself, unraveling already at one end. The girl kept tripping and laughing, then tripping again, never asking for help. Claire smiled. It was a soft, broken smile, the kind that came with years. 10 years. But some grief doesn't count in calendar time. On the mantel behind her sat the box. Not a keepsake box. Just a plain scratched tin that once held sewing needles, buttons, and things too sharp for a child's reach. Inside it now, a scorched corner of the old map, the locket they found in the chamber, and the photo her, a baby, cradled in her father's arms, faces half shadowed by a sun they'd tried so hard to escape. Her daughter screamed with delight. Outside, Claire didn't flinch. The wind chimes rattled with no wind. They had moved 3 times since Eden's Hollow. Changed states, names, passwords. But some things followed without feet, memory, dread. The feeling someone's watching when no one is. Claire taught her daughter to notice shadows without naming them, to trust silences, to breathe slow in locked rooms. "You okay?" the neighbor had asked last week. She hadn't known how to answer. Inside her chest, the words her mother had spoken once still lived. Fossilized. "If you tell anyone, you'll destroy us all." And yet here she was. Still here. Not destroyed. Not whole, either. The kettle clicked off behind her. She didn't move. On the table beside the tin box sat the torn piece of stationery. One of the letters her father had written but never sent. This one was addressed to "My little bird." The ink had faded in parts, smudged as if his hands shook when writing it. He had tried. That counted for something, narrator aside. But the letter left one name off. Her daughter returned to the porch, breath clouding, face red from cold. Claire opened the door, took the wet gloves, and kissed her knuckles the way her father used to do. She didn't say anything, just held the girl's small hands between her own until they stopped trembling. "Hot cocoa?" Claire offered. The girl nodded. The kettle hissed again. The same whistle as the one in that motel room. That week when she had almost left everything behind. That week when she nearly ran. She poured 2 mugs. Set them on the counter. On the fridge hung a drawing crayon sun. 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, both wearing capes. Underneath, in wobbly letters, "Me and Mommy fight monsters." Echo motif. Claire's fingers traced the cape on the stick figure. Once she had worn a cape too, but it had caught fire. In the living room, the fireplace crackled. She hadn't meant to keep the ashes from the map, but something about letting them go too soon felt dishonest. You can't rewrite what hasn't finished bleeding. The girl sat cross-legged on the rug, slurping cocoa. Claire sat behind her, smoothing her daughter's damp hair. "Mommy," the girl said softly, as if choosing each word like a stone to throw. "Who was my grandpa?" Claire's breath caught, a skip in her chest like a forgotten beat. "A hero," she said finally. "But not the kind in books." The girl nodded solemnly, as if that made perfect sense. A log in the fire split down the middle with a sharp crack. She hadn't said his name out loud in years. The syllables lived in her throat like splinters. But tonight, her daughter had asked. Claire stood and crossed the room. From the tin box, she pulled the photo. The baby in the image had her daughter's same jaw, same furrowed brow. She hadn't noticed that before. "His name was Daniel," she said quietly. The girl looked up. "Like the lion one in the story?" Claire smiled, exactly like that. She didn't mention the bones, or the blood, or the way her mother had stood at the edge of that tunnel, eyes dry, saying, "He had a choice." We all did. Her mother had never cried in front of her. Not when they left, not during the custody battles, not at the hospital. But the photo they found in the locked drawer, the one of the 3 of them, before everything had a bent corner. Smudged with mascara, narrator aside, but the photo hid something worse. The window behind the couch began to fog. She moved to it, wiped it with her sleeve, and stared into the backyard. Snowflakes caught on the clothesline. She remembered being 7, kneeling beside her father, whispering prayers neither of them believed, pretending God was listening. Outside, the commune watched, their silence louder than gunfire. Her mother used to say forgiveness was a currency for cowards. That survival didn't come with softness. But now, with her daughter curled into a blanket near the fire, Claire wondered what it would have cost her mother to be gentle. Soft setup. Behind the tin box, Claire kept a USB, untouched, loaded with scans of police files, photos from the hollow, the map, the letters. Not for revenge. Not yet. If she ever needs the truth. Claire had written on the label, "It's here." They sat in silence for a long while. Then the girl whispered, "Do heroes die?" Claire didn't lie. "Sometimes." The girl mulled that over then. Nodded. "Okay." There was a strength in her daughter that Claire had never had at that age. Or maybe she had, and it had simply been buried beneath too many adult secrets. The clock ticked. Somewhere outside, a car passed. Claire returned the letter to the tin box and added something new, her wedding ring. She hadn't worn it in months. Her husband had left quietly, not cruelly, just tired, as if living beside someone who carried. Ghosts was its own kind of death, emotional reversal. Once she thought marriage would fix the silence inside her. Now she found more peace alone. She placed the tin back on the shelf, high enough that tiny fingers wouldn't reach it by accident. "You know," she said, her voice steady, "you don't have to be brave all the time." The girl looked up. "But I want to be." Claire nodded, eyes burning. "Me too." The snow had stopped. The sky outside was soft gray, a color she remembered from the robe her father wore the night they tried to flee, the last night he tucked her in. "Tomorrow," Claire said, "we'll go somewhere new." "Where?" "Someplace that doesn't remember us." "Okay." "If healing matters, you'll want to see where they go next." Claire turned off the fireplace, gathered the mugs, switched off the lights. As she tucked her daughter into bed, the girl grabbed her wrist and whispered, "Was he scared?" Claire paused. "Yes, but he stayed anyway." The girl didn't ask why. She didn't have to. Outside, the wind lifted the snow into the shape of a man and then let him fall.